Rant, delicious. Welcome to the SEO Rant. My name is Mordy Oberstein. You might know me better as Wix officially is unto the SEO community, but I will remind you yet again, if this is your first time listening, this has nothing to do with that. This is pure, unofficial Mordy magic. Where can you find the SEO Rant? You can find it at the SEORant.com. Surprising. You can find us on Twitter at SEO Rant or follow me on Twitter at Mordy Oberstein. You can also find this podcast on Stitcher, on Spotify, on SoundCloud, and iTunes, wherever great, mediocre, and subpar podcasts are found. We're there. Joining us today is the founder of Digital Rescue Rangers. She's a speaker, she's a thinker, and she's a proud member of the Women in Tech SEO. She is Miranda Gahrmann. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Did I pronounce your last name right?
Yes.
Okay, good. I'm like terrible.
I hear a lot of variations, but you pronounce it right.
Yes, it's amazing. Which I'm terrible with names, so every time I get it right, I'm really surprised. Can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Rescue Rangers. Where did that name come from?
Yeah. So I was working at Philips. And the IT guys, they released something, but we were not aware that it was released. And then I have a Chrome extension in my browser, which says, which always turns green if a page is on index. But then I was going through a couple of pages and it turns red. And I was like, that's weird. Like it's a shop category page. Like why would you put that to no index? And then I was like, okay, like checking the whole website. And then I saw that all the category pages were on no index, which are like the most important pages on the website.
Oh my God.
And then they're operating in more than 80 countries. And then I saw it was rolled out across 80 countries. So I was like, wow. Like, so we were immediately like flagging to IT, like what's happening here and please fix it. But then of course, if you fix it, like it can take at least like 1 week or 1.5 weeks before Google picks it up again. So all the markets were like, what's happening? And so at that moment we were like, we're the rescue rangers of this company. So that's why how the name came up.
I'll tell you why I asked that, because I was growing up, I'm originally from the States, growing up as a kid, there was a cartoon called Rescue Rangers. Yeah. And I was so hoping there was a tie-in.
Yeah, no, definitely they were inspired because like, we also saw that cartoon when we were young. so that's why we had in one of our first logos, we had like the same clothes as them.
Oh,
and,
nice.
So there was a connection.
So you really embraced it. You were like, oh no, it's a cartoon. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
It's very nostalgic for me. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Same.
So we have a nice little topic here, and I'm gonna just throw it out there. Miranda, what's on your mind today?
Site migrations.
Oh no, everyone's mind just exploded.
Yeah. Well, we got a lot of them. So we did now in the last year, we did like 10 migrations. Nice. And for the upcoming 2 years, we have about 50 to go.
Wow.
So it's if you ask what is on my mind, this is really on my mind, like morning, afternoon, evening.
That sounds stressful.
Yes, but it is very stressful, especially when the site is going live, just like the few days before, because then like usually you make the redirects in the last 2 weeks. We start working on the redirects. If you started earlier, then developers come back and they say, it's not finished yet, so it's not working. So you can do that at the last phase. But then when we're doing redirects, you visit almost every page of the website. So you come across issues and then flagging them again. And then they're trying to fix it before launch date. So especially like, the last 1.5 week before the launch date, that's a very stressful period.
Yeah, I'm sure. So so just talk to me about migrations. What are your thoughts? Because I really want to hand the mic over to you.
Yeah,
what are you thinking about my?
So I think before you start with any migration, it's good to keep a couple of principles in mind. One is you want to isolate the migration because you really want to see what is the impact of the migration versus any content changes, what you will do in the future. So my recommendations to any country we work with, please migrate all the content because if you skip pages or you say that pages are outdated, but they're still generating traffic, that will result in traffic loss. So one principle is like migrate all the content and migrate all the content in its current state. So you have like the least changes as possible. The second is like keep the URLs the same. Oh, sorry, you want to say something?
No. It's all you.
Okay.
Don't you worry. I will let you know when something's on my mind.
Okay. So with the URLs, it's preferably to keep all the URLs the same. So you don't have to do redirects, because what we notice is that every time when you use redirects, there's some loss of SEO value. So we see some like slight decline in the traffic. So we try to keep all the URLs the same, except when we see a large area of improvement. Then it makes sense to change the URL. That I think actually like the two basis points. Then from a technical point of view, making sure that new CMS is, or the new platform is faster, is better, and yeah, especially not slower, because then of course you have like a negative impact. And just making sure that the SEO principles are in place. Like, can the content be very easily indexed? What we see is that if you disable, or like basically Google is okay with content in JavaScript, but Bing has a lot more issues with it. So what we use as a guideline is progressive enhancement. So all the content is there, but you use JavaScript to make it look nicer. So that's also the principle what we try to maintain.
That's a really good point, because I never, when I think about everything about anything in SEO, I'm never thinking about Bing. Mm-hmm. But that's like a real mold. Like if you're in Russia, right? So you have Yandex. If you're in China, there's how do you, if you're an international site, or if you're working with multiple clients who from multiple locations or multiple countries, how do you consider the various search engines when you're trying to do a site migration?
Yeah, so usually I find Google the most strict one. So usually if we keep Google in mind, then you're also automatically also fine for the other search engines. There are a couple, I thought it was about Naver. There are a couple of search engines where you can only upload one sitemap. So it's something to keep in mind in their when you do in the development, to make sure that you also comply with the Webmaster Tool guidelines, at least that you can submit all the URLs to their Webmaster Tools. Yeah, but I find Google the most strict one in general.
So that's good.
Yes,
kind exactly. Of a baseline.
Yes.
Okay, so I always ask this when we're talking about site migrations. Can you share your, like, I don't know, the most horrific, worst possible case scenario you've ever had to face?
Well, one thing what you learn, like every site migration, you learn something. You're like, ooh, this we didn't follow about. So no,
that's a good point, by the way, because things are always going to come up, and I don't think with something like a site migration, you're going to have. I have it completely nailed down. There's always going to. It's not like you have it. We love checklists, and here's a checklist. Here's how it's going to go. I'll check off all the boxes, and everything will be fine. There's always something. I feel.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly. So we also have like the checklist. We have the process in mind. So the process what we use is that before the migration starts, we create a full list of URLs, which is containing from Google Search Console, analytics, site crawl, sitemaps, backlinks, paid search campaign, something which we learned that we should not forget the URLs which are being used in paid search. And then also what we learned is kind of marketing URLs. So when countries do like, how you say, offline advertising, or they have like banners with short URLs, those short URLs don't get traffic because it's a redirect, basically. But they are being used in offline communication. Right. So that's why we also now learned to ask the countries, like, do you have any of these URLs? Just to make sure that they also are present in the new platform. So first we create this whole list. We check the current status. Like, is it still generating a 200 status code? Or does it include 4 which we then need to include in the redirect? So we fix everything at the same time. And then that list goes to developers. They start developing and migrating all the content. And then when the site is almost ready, I do the technical checks. I check if all the content is migrated, and then start working on the redirects. So the first thing what went wrong with, like, your question, is with one country, with the first country we migrated, they thought, migration is coming up. We use this opportunity as a chance to update the website. So they updated the text, they updated the URLs. And so when I started the redirects, I couldn't find certain pages. So I thought, okay, it's not migrated. I cannot find it anymore. So I will do it to another page, which is similar, but it's not the same. That's something which will lead to traffic decline, because for Google, you're not answering that question anymore. You do about the topic, but it's not exactly answering the question where the user was looking for. Another thing that we had like offices, but then I couldn't find the offices. So I thought, okay, let's then choose the office page as the starting point.
Okay.
Also not a good thing. So basically it's very important to always do like one-on-one redirects, because even if you try a similar page, Google will find that you're not answer the page or answer the user query.
Yep.
So therefore you're declining traffic.
That's really right. It's the smarter Google gets, the more specific you need to, or the more aligned you really need to be. It's interesting.
Yes, exactly.
Yep. You can cough, by the way. You can cough on the podcast. It's okay.
No.
Miranda's beat herself so she can cough. Hey,
yeah,
it's totally fine. Sneezing is another story. I'm joking.
And then one of the latest migration, what we discovered. So we're sending all our jobs to Google via an indexing API. But then we changed the account, and the indexing API only works when the service account is verified as an owner in Google Search Console. So we had everything in place. We had the indexing API, we're sending jobs, and we were like, okay, they're not being picked up. Like, what's happening? And then this small verification led that the jobs were not being sent to Google. So it's like the errors are hidden in a small hole, but they can have some serious impact.
That's really interesting. I have to ask you, how did you make site migrations your thing? You wake up one morning like, yeah, you know what I want to do? Site migrations.
Yeah. So the largest client I work for is Randstad, and they're operating in 40 countries. And the way I started 4 years ago with them, and at that point, like all the countries had their own CMS, and they were operating very autonomously. But if you have like 40 websites and you have like a rebranding or you want to update your website, it's very costly. So there we thought like we need to go to one CMS to make it very SEO proof.
Mm-hmm.
And then at least like it's much more easier in terms of maintenance, in terms of technical SEO, because you have only one platform to review, although some instances, of course, some copies. So we built a new CMS and making sure that it's very SEO friendly. And then we started migrating countries one by one. And first we did we had a slow speed of like onboarding. So we migrated the countries like every once per 2 months, just to see how things are going. Is there anything what we need to improve on the process or on the website itself? And now, like for this year, we have at least 2 to 3 sites per month.
Wow, that's amazing. So you really like site migrations?
It's I was being pushed into it because basically it's my role. But yeah.
Why?
So usually,
why do you like site migrations?
Yeah, well, it's a part of the process. Like I look into the results. So in the end, I see like a much cleaner platform. But nice. The site migrations are part to get it there.
No, I'm being facetious. Like there is a lot there, but you know, when you talk to people like, yeah, what's the best thing you love doing about SEO? It's usually not site migrations. It's such an anomaly.
Yeah, well, usually I like international SEO. That's like my main core. So before Randstad, I worked for Philips, also in the global SEO, global SEO specialist. So mainly like international, working with different languages, working with different teams across the countries. That is something what I really like. Now being with the site migrations, it's part of the job. And I think it's very necessary to do it because we make a lot of changes and improvements to the CMS platform. Mm-hmm. So I'm also very triggered by performance. So I like to see growth.
Nice. Good.
So with this new CMS, it offers a lot more opportunities to really grow in traffic. So that's why
that's amazing.
Yeah, like I'm so focused on the site migrations now.
It's just a funny, like it's so amazing in SEO. Like there's so many ways to skin the cat, so many ways you can go about trying to drive growth, or so many ways you can try to improve the site. And this is very interesting, really cool. The last little segment that I guess, or last little question that I have is, just because, site migrations can be so daunting for people. If someone's out there and they're just getting started with working on site migrations and doing this thing and really getting into it, what would you recommend to them or not recommend to them?
Yeah. First of all, get an SEO in a very early stage. Sometimes they're being pulled into site migrations just for making the redirects, and then it's too late already. Because you need to make sure that the new platform is at least better than the old one, or because if it's slower or the content is not able to, if you, for example, move from a Drupal or WordPress maybe to React as a JavaScript network, maybe that's not the best thing to do. So by having SEO embedded in a very early stage, already when you start the talks about migration, that's one key element to make sure at least that you get a good result. Also to make sure that you have a full scope of all the URLs. So which are the URLs that drive traffic to the site? What I like to do is when you go to Google Search Console, you only get like 1,000 URLs. But if you connect Google Search Console to Data Studio, you get all the URLs and you get all the keywords. So you need to make sure that you get a full scope of what you're going to migrate to prevent any errors along the process or any surprises after go live. Right.
Nice. Awesome.
And then the redirects are there are a couple of things. Is the platform, is it good? Then making sure that all the URLs are in scope, so you don't get any surprises. Migrate all the content, preferably in the same way. Don't change the URLs unless you see a clear improvement. And then if you need to set up redirects, make sure they are one-on-one redirects.
Right. Yeah. That's a good point.
And then you also, you got a couple of after checks.
Okay.
So one thing which is very important, like after the launch, is the robots.txt updated? Because usually when you move a test or like a dev environment, when you move it to the live site, it usually has like a no crawl still in the robots.txt. So that's like a first thing to update. And then very closely monitoring the traffic. So you can also see, is there any issue? Do we need to take any action to maintain the traffic?
What's your timeline on that? How do you think about in terms of like when you migrate over to you start seeing issues, to you start seeing performance jump to where you want to go? Because it can take time.
Yeah, exactly. So usually, sometimes it happens that a country is panicking in the first week, like we're losing traffic, like what's happening up. But in those cases, it's usually not related to SEO. So it could be that their tracking is not set up correctly, that they pass their paid campaigns. Right. So suddenly they see a drop. Yeah, it sounds logical, but it happened a couple of times. So because that causes a drop in conversions and a drop in traffic. So usually what I do, if there's an issue in the first week, I go to analytics. I split it out per traffic channel to see which channel is giving a drop. Then from an SEO point of view, that usually kicks in from the second or the third week, where you start to see like an increase or decline. So
how do you deal with a panic client? It's like, oh my God, what's going on? It has lost everything.
Yeah, I try to be really data driven. So I export all the URLs. You have to, because that's actually the advantage of SEO as well. You can track it down to URL and you can track it down to keyword. So I use there the Google Search Console integration in Data Studio. So then I make a list of all the URLs before the migration. And then, for example, from the last week, so I compare the same time period with each other. So 1 week before the migration, 1 week, or like the last week where we're looking into, and then I'm checking what is the traffic per URL, and what is the ranking for each keyword. So if I see some changes there, then I'm looking, okay, what is the page which is currently ranking? Is there any issue? Is there any issue with the content compared to the old site, or something what we need to improve there?
So you're probably by the time they come to you, probably know the answer already at that point.
Yeah, when we go live, I do every week, I do 2 site crawls to spot any issues. And I repeat that process for the first 3 weeks. Then from the 4th week on, I do once per week a site crawl for another 3 weeks. And then I give the site back to them, like basically that it's under their monitoring again.
There you go.
Yeah. Well, you have to, because otherwise, if you keep on migrating like 2 sites, 3 sites per month, you cannot keep doing the site crawls for a long time.
Right. So with that, by the way, I have never met somebody as passionate about site migrations as you. This has been very refreshing. I just want to say that. That's
My
amazing.
pleasure.
No, it's like,
My
it's
pleasure.
really nice to hear. Because usually you hear like the complaining about the site migrations, but it's nice to hear someone very passionate about the site migrations.
Yeah.
Where can people find you?
It,
No, I'm sorry. You go. Sorry, I didn't cut you off.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think that is because the site migration is also a very good opportunity to improve the website. So some things like for site architecture, which you cannot change them on a daily basis. Then with our site migration, you're reviewing every section of the site. Like, do we keep it in the same way? Or do we see improvement, what we want to fix for now and build on that? So in that case, yeah, it's a hassle. It's a lot of work. I look forward to when I can finally have some sleep again, or like a free weekend. But I think it's worth it.
Nice. Okay, now where can people find you?
Yeah, I'm quite active on LinkedIn. Of course, on my Digital Rescue Rangers website and Clubhouse. So there I'm also quite often present. Yeah.
I just got on that. I just got an iPhone. So we'll see how that goes.
It's very, I find it very, very interesting because you can just step, it depends on the quality or it depends on the room you're in. Right. But especially you hear like experts from all different sectors, from different countries speaking about certain topics.
Right.
So with SEO, it's also important to stay up to date because things are changing. So that's why I think it's good to tap into either like conferences, website, but also Clubhouse to keep the knowledge up to date.
Nice. Okay. Well, I'll have to dive into that a little bit more than I currently am if I have time. Oh, and you're on Twitter as well, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
I'm not very, very active on Twitter, but I am on Twitter.
She is there. I'll link to all these places. I don't think I can link to Clubhouse, but I'll link to all of these places in the show notes.
Great.
Miranda, it's been great having you on. When is the next episode of the SEO Rant come out? I don't know. I should have mentioned this in the intro. I always botch this. There's no set schedule to the SEO Rant. I kind of put it out whenever I have time. It ends up being weekly, but there is officially no set schedule. So it makes sense to head over to wherever you consume your podcast and subscribe, or head over to the SEO Rant and subscribe there as well and get notified when a new episode comes out. Because again, there's no set schedule. Miranda, thank you again for coming on. This is really, really interesting. And I appreciate your passion.
Thank you for inviting me.
Sure. Until the next time, toodles.